Hey, what's up guys? Randy Rektor here, back with another video. And today I'm gonna show you guys how I set up my YouTube videos. So hopefully there's some tips that you guys can take from this video to utilize in your own content. Grab yourself a coffee and let's get to it. Now I film everything pretty much in this front office in my house. It's a little bedroom, it's about 8 feet by 10 feet, so it's pretty limited in terms of the different angles that I can shoot. Now before we set up any camera stuff, I do wanna say, my background is in audio and music. If you guys see something and you're thinking, man, that's so wrong, why is he doing that? Let me know down in the comments because I want to learn, so thank you in advance. Now I pretty much always film this direction, and the reason being is this is the widest part of the room, so I can get the most separation between myself and the backdrop. It's a really common theme that you're gonna hear a lot of in this video is separating me from the backdrop. And it's really hard to do in a small room like this. So there's a couple different tips that we have here. And I also film this way because I've got the IKEA thing back there, the little pegboard, as well as some shelves with some decorations. So I think it just looks the best. Now you might remember I used to shoot like this. And the reason I stopped shooting this direction was because this big white door on the left side here, it was just too much sort of empty space that wasn't really being used. So I thought that this just looked a little bit better, a little bit more polished and a little bit more balanced. The next step is to set up my camera. And now the camera I'm filming on right now is the Panasonic GH5. And I'm using a Sigma 16mm lens for the main shot, as well as a 30mm lens for all my B-roll shots. The first step is to plug my camera into this external monitor here. The monitor just really helps make sure that I'm in frame. So as I'm recording, I can kind of see what's going on in the shot. I can see if I'm holding things too far out to the sides and that kind of thing. To set up my camera, I typically film in 4K, 10-bit, 422, and in 24 frames per second. And I usually film in Cinelike D. I did get the Vlog upgrade and I was using it for a little while, but I found that I was getting some green and magenta patches in my skin tone sometimes. They'd just be really strangely shifted and kind of blotchy. I've tried some different settings, so I'm gonna try Vlog with this video and see how it turns out. We'll see. Then I make sure that my ISO is as low as possible because I know that my scene is gonna be pretty well lit. I know that I don't need my ISO up, so I drop that down to 400, which is as low as you can go with Vlog. I set my aperture to 1.4, and on a GH5, which is a micro four thirds camera, it's basically like a 2.8, so it doubles that aperture. But still, I'm able to get some nice depth of field, so again, I can separate myself from that backdrop a little bit more. The last step is to set my frame rate, and I know that the 180-degree rule means that your shutter speed is double your frame rate, which gives you the most natural motion blur. Now, I actually can't use 180 degrees because these LED lights behind me tend to flicker. Just because they're not film grade LEDs, they'll actually flicker against that frame rate. So I have to drop the frame rate down to 172.9, I think it is, 172.6, just to make sure that the lights aren't flickering. What you're seeing right now is just the open window and the overhead lights that I have. So the first thing that I do is close the window because there's too much fluctuation. If like clouds go by or something like that, and then I make a cut, you'll see that it goes from exposed to underexposed. So then you can see these overhead lights are a little bit less than flattering. So I'll go ahead and turn those off. I get a little bit of light coming in, but it's not a big deal. So the first light that I use in my setup is my key light, which looks like this. This is the Godox VL200 LED light. It's a super powerful light and I actually keep it on about 17%, 19% according to the remote. Comes with a nice remote, which is kind of cool. And I have a grid on it, which basically stops the light from hitting the backdrop. So it's really directional light, but it's nice and big. So it's a really soft light, kind of giving me this nice glow on the outside of my skin. Ideally, I'd have this a little bit more off to the side, get a bit more shadow on this side of your face. That's sort of what I'm going for, but because this room is so small, if I move it even an inch, it's gonna be in the frame. So pretty much has to live right there, the nature of a small room. My wife and I used an old softbox from Cowboy Studio. It was $100 and we used that for up until about 2 months ago. So my wife's entire YouTube channel, she's been doing it for like 7 years. We used a $100 light that entire time. Just completely destroyed that light and completely outgrew it. So it's nice to have something that we're finally feeling like is a bit more professional. The next thing that I do is I turn on some LEDs behind me. So I have one behind the screen and I have one up against the wall behind the desk over there. So that one looks like this. And the one behind the screen is, I can shoot like this, but it's definitely pretty dark. So I like to shoot in that LED splashing off the wall. So I use that to shoot off the wall just to bring up the overall brightness of the room a little bit. I don't really like the whole dark, moody video every time. It's just, I don't know, I like it to be nice and bright sometimes. And finally, depending on how energetic I feel, I also have these little Neewer SL12 lights, and I have it on a little flex arm here. What I use these for is sometimes just to put up on that top shelf, shooting directly at me. So the light up behind me just adds a little bit of a rim, a little bit of a kicker just to separate me from the backdrop. So once I have my shot set up and all the lights ready to go, the next step is to double check my exposure. So for that, I use one of these X-Rite color checker passport things. And basically what I'm shooting for is to get this gray color here to green and false colors. And then you can double check your exposure by bringing up false color on your monitor, if your monitor supports this. Now, you'll notice there's a bit of yellow up here, so I actually want my skin to be mostly that gray and that peach color. So I'm gonna lower my key light down in 1% increments just until that yellow is pretty much gone. And right about there, that's definitely a much more accurate exposure. Then I'll use one of these little gray cards. There is a gray card on here, but it's way too small. So I use this one here to set up my manual white balance. So I just hold this up, take a picture of it, and the camera will set that white balance accordingly. That way I know I'm not getting too much shift in the greens and magentas. It should be pretty accurate. The last step is to set up my audio. So I use the Rode NTG3 shotgun microphone, and I actually attach it to the same C-stand that I attach my key light. So everything's on one stand, which is super convenient. And this microphone is just out of frame, and it's pointed sort of on an angle towards my mouth a little bit. And the audio goes from the microphone, down the boom pole, down the C-stand, and into my sound device's MixPre 6. And I set my levels to peak right around -12 or -6. And I actually have the limiter turned on to start limiting after -6. But I keep it on 24-bit audio with the limiters on just in case I get a little bit excited, which happens sometimes. Then I go ahead and I make sure my camera's recording and I make sure my audio's recording. Then I hold up this color checker, hold it still for a couple of seconds so I have this footage in post. And then I bring up my script, which sits right in front of me on an iPad just below the camera. I basically just look at each paragraph, kind of study each paragraph for a second, get the general gist of what I'm trying to say and really interpret what I'm trying to say and how I'm trying to say it and why it's important and that sort of thing. And then I basically look at the camera and freestyle each section until I feel like I've really nailed it. So this section that you're watching, I felt like I nailed it, so I kept it. Now, my best advice that I could give you is sit down in front of your window, use your window as lighting, hold up your phone, get the best darn footage that you can possibly get and experiment. Like try, turning your axis to the window, seeing how that changes the lighting on your face and the different shadows that creates, and get really good with those tools. Then get a lamp and start using a lamp and master the lamp. Figure out what you love about it, what you hate about it, figure out every single way that you can use that lamp to get really good lighting, and then upgrade. I walked through this exact same path with music and with audio production. I've made entire albums on SM57s and then just completely abused those mics until the point where I knew every single thing about them. And then I'd go out and buy a condenser microphone, and all of a sudden my mind just exploded with all this creativity because all of a sudden there's this new sound that I'm so unfamiliar with. That's a process that I'm actually kind of grateful for from my music and from my recording days, and I'm really implementing that in my film production. About every couple of months, I convince my wife that we need to buy something new, and we go out and buy it, and I just obsess over using it until the point where I feel like I've really got it. And I really hope that that process is something that you guys can use in your own videos. So this is definitely not the end of my video making saga. This is the end of this chapter, and I thought I finally have a good setup that I'm quite proud of, and it'd be a good time to sort of bookmark this stage in my process. So I hope that from this video, you guys can take at least a couple tips and apply them to your own creativity to make some killer videos. And we will see you guys in the next one.